Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour. And today is Wednesday, August 4th, 2021. And on this Wednesday, August 4th, 2021, we are grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives. As we spend another couple I had to cough. As we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever discovered or encountered. These tools are available absolutely free at whyagain.org. If you go to that page and click on the Start Here link in the upper left-hand corner, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Rice's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? That book chapter contains a narrative description of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet, and it's a tool I've been using to great effect for over 17 years in my life to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each of us has been given. You can also download the actual worksheet process itself. It's a simple PDF file. Click on it, download it, print it off, and use it as often as you'd like. You can also download a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one where people have been stepped through the worksheet process or given powerful testimonials about how the actual application of that tool in their lives has benefited them. You can also go to your app store and type in the 3 words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness. And before you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see the glowing heart icon. And if you tap on that, it will let you download a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet, an abbreviated version of that process, and a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. And we're hoping people do that soon and often because that usually leads to questions or comments, or if people are actually using the tools in their lives, it often leads to valuable testimonials. If you're one of those people and you've had access to these tools or you have questions about them and you want to make a comment or a question, give us a call at 563-999-3581. Alternatively, you can send an email to tjh@mindshifters-academy.org, or you can email Jeannie at jeanie@yagain.org. When we receive your comments or questions, we will address them on the air. And then you can have access to the archives to listen back if you're not able to join us live. We're also doing, the commitment this year is to go through the Course in Miracles workbook lessons, one for each day. And today is the 216th day of the year, which means we're on lesson 216. This is again a review. We are reminded, I am not a body. I am free, for I am as the Creator created me. Lesson 196 review says, it can be but myself I crucify. All that I do unto myself. If I attack, I suffer. But if I forgive, salvation will be given to me. I am not a body. I am free, for I am as the Creator created me to be. And we're also doing the Course in Miracles experiment lessons with Pam Grout. And her lesson 216 is titled, Facts are Opinions Holding Down Reality Until We Move Beyond. She quotes Chris Carr as saying, our thoughts hold more medicine than many of the astonishing breakthroughs of our time. Pam writes, the body is the ego's greatest invention, its most potent tool. A fallible, aging body provides the ultimate distraction. The irony, of course, is we become so preoccupied with caring for our bodies that we never stop to recognize they're simply acting out our beliefs. The Course regards the body as a learning device. It says its abilities are highly overrated. If the body acts up, it's the mind that needs correction. But that's only true 100% of the time. Our beliefs are expectations, and expectations are in fact so powerful that placebos, which are fake treatments like sugar pills and saline solutions and sham surgery, these things cause bald men to grow hair, they cause high blood pressure to drop, they cause ulcers to heal, they cause dopamine levels to increase, and they even cause tumors to shrink. And although pharmaceutical companies would rather keep this on the down low, placebos relieve symptoms that are on a par with real medication. In other words, it's our beliefs that do the healing. Facts, despite what scientists, teachers, and CNN tell you, facts are opinions holding down material reality until we can move beyond them. So, that's our Course in Miracles lesson for today, and the Course in Miracles experiment lesson from Pam Grout. And we have 50 minutes left to discuss comments or questions, to explore a topic of your choosing. What's on your mind today? How can we support you? Our call-in number again is 563-999-3581. And if you call that number and press 1, we can have a conversation. We had a support group last night, and it was one of those rare times in recent memory where, as the group was progressing and was over, I thought to myself, I got to go back and listen to that. There was some really different stuff there. There was some slightly different perspectives addressing the basics of this work and understanding that my understanding at deeper and deeper levels that if I'm in any kind of emotional pain or discomfort, there's something amiss inside me, regardless of how much my mind is telling me that my pain or discomfort is being caused by the people and situations or the behaviors of people around me. And we had one member who took most of the session to do a worksheet for that very reason. He was convinced that something he was seeing in the news, something that was outside of himself, that was coming into his awareness through electronic devices, represented the truth of life and represented really good reasons for being angry or full of angst, very intense anxiety and discomfort and restlessness, and essentially fear of a negative outcome. And it was quite the challenge for this person to get through a worksheet because at almost every turn, they kept going to the global issues, whether it's politics or global warming or men versus women or racism and I had to keep trying to bring the person back to the idea that when we do a worksheet, I'm doing a worksheet about what's going on inside of me. And the entire fundamental basic observations of the worksheet are that nothing that's going on inside of me is being caused by the events outside of me. And the big learning in this work is to keep coming back to that observation. Not just talk about it, but make the observation. To catch myself when I'm in any kind of an upset and take a calming breath or 2 or 12, whatever's needed, and center the focus of my awareness back inside myself and understand at deeper and deeper levels through direct observation, time after time, the truth behind the words that say it's all an inside job. And the benefits that accrue to me if I am willing to pursue that observation are beyond words. And how deeply I can get trapped if I do not make that observation, if I continue to believe or operate from the belief that people and things outside of me are causing my upset. The depth of my despair will know no bounds. Because, what actually is not subject to change on a whim. So, the more I can work to bring myself into awareness, Anthony DeMello has a book titled Awareness, and he keeps talking about the difference between concentration and awareness. So if I'm focused in concentration, I can be focused in a very narrow range. And yet if I'm aware, I'm taking in all kinds of things. The example he uses is a driver, a really good driver. You can be riding in a car with a really good driver, and that person can even be having an argument with you, a verbal argument with you, and still be very aware of what's going on around them. Something changes in traffic, somebody makes a bad move, a pedestrian shows up where they're not supposed to be. The really good driver isn't thinking about that or focusing specifically on it, but it will move into his consciousness. He'll be aware so he can respond to it. So there's a tremendous difference between just saying the words and repeating the words. I know it's all an inside job, but there's a tremendous difference between that and having my openness, my willingness to be in the observer position in my life day in and day out, and continually catch myself when there is a thought that wants to blame someone or something outside of me for my experience. And when I catch that happening, I take a breath, I catch that happening, I focus inside myself, I shift the focus to the inside, and I start working with the tools. And or alternatively, I just start asking myself, okay, how am I creating this negative emotion? Or I ask myself over and over again, what am I making this situation mean? And that's where I'm going to find the roots of my upset, which are only, always, and forever created inside the energy system that's experiencing the upset. And when I understand that at deeper and deeper levels, transformation happens that words cannot describe. So that was a big part of the group last night that made me say, you know what, I'm going to go back and listen to some of that. Some of the examples that flowed as I was trying to help this person move from the very, very global set of issues to their own personal, internal experience, because that's where the emotions are being created. My emotions are only, always, and forever going to be created inside me where I am experiencing them. And the more I wake up to that observation, the more I am willing to make that active observation day in and day out, moment to moment, the better my life can become. Because the sooner I will step into the use of the tools that will help me see and therefore dissolve the negative impacts of my own internal process. So our caller number is 563-999-3581. I wanted to share with the audience that I have, and as my experience is expanding through doing the On Your Mind podcast, I was introduced to another podcast. It's titled The Unapologetically Black Unicorns. And this is Keris Myrick, Keris, Myrick, Myrick, I believe her name is. And here's a woman who is has lived experience with mental health challenges, who has now become an active advocate for people who face mental health challenges, and is involved in the peer treatment movement, peer-to-peer, and all kinds of wonderful alternative therapies and community-based therapies. And her most recent podcast is with a psychologist who's Latinx descent, Jorge Partilla del Toro. And it's a fascinating little, I don't know, it's 35 minutes or so of conversation about his introduction to healing, which was through his grandmother as basically the shaman in his village. And as he grew up, he felt like, hey, I should be doing something to help heal people. And then when he got into school, he thought, well, psychology is the closest thing to what my grandmother was doing. And he tells the story of how that has now evolved into his awareness that as an individual therapist, he has very limited ability to impact the number of people that need help. But if he helps establish community-based support or treatment, then he can affect a lot more people positively. So it's Unapologetically Black Unicorns. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts. And it's Keris, Keris, Myrick. And that's just one of, I think it's the 9th, I think there's an intro and then 9 episodes. And I've listened to them all, and they're worth it. This is people who are dealing with their own lived experience and helping others through mental health challenges and accommodating to the society we have, which has lots of biases and prejudices and glitches in the system that don't support us as well as it could as human beings. And so that's yet another offering, another trigger to say, if you've been listening to a podcast or if you've read an author and you think it would be good for us to interview him or her, please let me know. Give us a call at 563-999-3581 or send me an email at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org. And I will explore that and explore the options for either having the author on or having the podcast host on Mindshifters Radio or doing an episode of the On Your Mind podcast for Journey's Dream as we continue to try and raise awareness for mental health and recovery and holistic, integrative, and functional medicine approaches. And anything you can do to help us with that is greatly appreciated. I was listening also this morning, as I mentioned, to one of my favorite books by Anthony DeMello, which is titled Awareness. And in that book, he's talking about the significant difference, the powerful difference between concentration and awareness. And one of the ways he said it is, concentration is like a spotlight, and awareness is like a floodlight. So it is the open, allowing, surrendering observation, active observation. It's devoid of judgment. It's open, it's soft, it's yielding, it's allowing. And it's this state of being able to take in everything about what's going on. And I can't do that when I'm in judgment. I can't do that if I'm operating from a bias or a prejudice. I can't do that when I think I'm right. That was another part of the group last night. We kept coming to the part in the worksheet process where it says, I cancel my need to be right. I cancel my need to make up another story out of what my brain cells are showing me about my brain's content is showing me, to try and rationalize or hallucinate the proof that I'm right and that my fear and or hostility-based reality is true. And this is one of the key points that we kept coming to last night, is that hidden gems in the worksheet process, if I'm in any kind of pain or discomfort, it means that my thinking is in error. It means that at the very least, what I think I know is only partially true. It might be completely false, but it might be only partially true. And I could learn, I could choose over time to experience any negative emotion that I have as the alarm system, as the wake-up call to get me to realize that there's something faulty in my thoughts. And this is tricky because the thing that I'm using to process my thoughts is my brain, my ego, my sense of self, my identity. And it's busy telling me, sometimes vehemently telling me, that I'm right and that the world or the people around me are wrong. So it's quite tricky to move from there to questioning and allowing that I might be only looking at a partial picture. At best, I'm only looking at a partial picture. And that whatever I'm doing with that partial picture in this moment is less effective than it could be. How do I know that? Because I have a negative emotion arise. If I'm in stress or strain, if I'm in anger or fear or hurt, if I'm in sadness, grief, anxious, anxiety, thoughts of vengeance, thoughts that I'm right and the other person's wrong with an emotion attached, whether it's just tightness, clenching of my fists or my jaw, that's enough to help me see, if I'm willing to let it help me see, that whatever it is I think I know is only partially true. My own alarm system is trying to educate me. Tim, you're not seeing the whole picture. If you're in anger, if you're in fear, if you're in sadness, if you're stuck having the same thoughts over and over again with an intensity, even if you wouldn't label them negative, chances are pretty good your system is hiding from you a negative emotional state. And the very best use of my awareness of that state is to take a breath, call a timeout, turn the focus inside myself, and cancel everything that my mind is showing me about the current situation and what its best guess is about how it needs to change in order for me to be happy or safe. Cancel everything my mind would tell me about the current situation. Cancel everything my mind has decided needs to happen in order for me to be safe or happy or contented or to move forward in my life. And that's a practice That is, for some of us, it's been decades of conditioning to the exact opposite. So in the beginning, I have to undo the old conditioning. In the beginning, I have to be willing to catch myself when I'm in judgment, when I'm in tension or fear, and change what I've been taught to do when fear or judgment arises. So it's a multi-step process. First, there's awareness, and then there has to be a change in the response. I have to reprogram myself to catch the old response and refuse to do it. If I'm going to learn to do something new that might be productive, the first and most important step is stop doing what I'm already doing that I know doesn't work. And most of us have been trained to be so overly reliant on the conscious logical that we then say, okay, but then what? And the answer to that, okay, but then what question is nothing. Just do that, because until I've done that, until I have regimented myself to the point where I can stop doing what I've been doing over and over again that I know doesn't work, until I do that, there is no option, there is no space for me to create the option for something new. And it is insane at a fundamental level for me to continue to do something that hasn't worked the last 118,000 times I've done it. So it takes commitment, it takes willingness, it takes this commitment to stay focused on myself, to come back to the basics over and over and over again, that say, okay, whatever it is I'm doing, if it isn't working, the first thing I need to do is mute so I can sneeze without making a noise on the radio. But the first thing I need to do is stop doing what I know doesn't work. And many times in this work, as I discovered, about a month ago, I'd been working at something, beating my head against a brick wall for a couple of years. Many times what I need is an entirely different perspective that my conscious logical mind cannot give me. Which is why we advocate first recognizing, training ourselves to recognize what we're already doing and connect it accurately with an accurate assessment of its productivity or lack of productivity. And then choose again. How? In the beginning, by simply refusing to go on automatic pilot and do what we've done before that hasn't worked. That much is what opens the door. If I cannot do that, the door stays shut. There is no hope for a change. I found myself earlier today, I was having a session with somebody, and they said that their partner is sloppy, and it just drives them crazy. And I interrupted her, and I said, if you would like to change, and she said, oh, yes, I really want to change. I said, then I'm going to invite you to throw the door open for change by simply beginning right here. Correct the lie you just told yourself. It does not drive you crazy that your partner is sloppy. It, as an outside force, does not control your emotions. And she said, well, what are you talking about? Of course it drives me crazy. And I said, let's just talk about it more accurately. Let's say I drive myself to irritation or craziness in response to his sloppiness. So we're not denying that he has an entirely different level of sloppiness or neatness than you do. We want you to trust your observations. We want you to trust a certain level of your own perception. And we want you to describe the actual internal process that's creating your emotions more accurately. Because until you do that, there is no possibility for you to change your emotional state. Your emotional state is being created inside of you. You drive yourself crazy as you interpret and respond to your partner's neatness or sloppiness. And fortunately for her, she got it. She got it. And when we did this process, she flashed back to when she was 7 years old. And it was her sensitivity to her mother's anger when she was 7. In the current situation, it's her anger, and her mind is telling her that she's angry because her partner is sloppy. But when she made the connection, when she canceled that goal, when she recognized she's the one creating her anger today, and she asked to be shown the hidden part of her mind that's actually creating this upset, it connected with her being 7 years old and her mother being angry at her. And the bottom line was her mother didn't like the way she dressed, or would only partially dress, or would be too much of a tomboy, or whatever it is for the individual. And she was in that state at 7 years old where she downloaded these negative emotions from her mother in, as Bruce Lipton would call it, a hypnotic state, where she just is wide open energetically and she downloads all this information. Maybe her brain waves are in theta, and she just sucks it all up, and then she goes and lives her life, and she pushes it out of conscious awareness so she can enjoy herself and be a 7-year-old who's playing in the backyard and in partial states of undress, etc., and not worried about it at all. But the energetic imprint is there. And she grows up, and she becomes an adult, and she's rather meticulous, and she ends up with a partner who she loves very much, who is somewhat sloppy, and the old conditioning, the old mental conditioning, and the old resonating of these angry energies all combine to convince her that her partner is driving her crazy. And as long as she believes that her partner's sloppiness is driving her crazy, she will not be able to improve her mood. She will not be able to find sanity, calmness, compassion. The opening of the door is to say, I am generating a lot of crazy thoughts, anger, frustration, anxiety, in response to the way I've interpreted my partner's sloppiness. And once that happens, and then I'm willing to cancel my need for my partner to get more neat and to do this or do that, or not leave poppy seeds on the floor, or whatever it is, then the window is open for me to ask to be shown. What's in me? What have I downloaded at some earlier time in my life that's getting resonated here, that's flooding me with a strong negative emotion, that's distorting my perception? How can I ask to see more clearly the depth and the richness, the breadth, the depth, and the richness of the life that's unfolding in, through, as, and around me in this moment? And when I'm willing to ask to be shown that, what's possible goes beyond words. And before I'm willing to genuinely do that, before I train myself to give those words real power in my life, I'm not able to open. There is no space. There is no possibility for insight, intuition, a different view, a different level of integration and understanding of life until I'm willing to let it all go. So, powerful worksheet last night, powerful session with a patient earlier this morning, all basic, coming back to basics, the basic observations. This is only, always, and forever an inside job. And when I learn as Krishnamurti would call me to do, to see the false as the false, to see the false that's parading around as though it's true. When I learn to quit trying to pretend that what's true is not true, or that what's false might someday be true, when I learn to stop and cancel the goals and genuinely ask to be shown, a world of possibilities opens up, and not until then. So our call-in number is 563-999-3581, and we have 21 or so minutes left. How can we support you? What's on your mind? What is the pocket of brain cells that are getting stirred up through the monologue so far today? We've mentioned a number of different things. We've mentioned unapologetically black unicorns. We've mentioned Anthony DeMello and his awareness book. We've mentioned getting back to basics over and over and over again. The basics, the questioning, the learning to live in the question, the understanding that when I cancel my need to be right, I'm canceling my need to be right about all of the good things I think about myself and all the bad things I think about myself. If I'm operating from the classic imposter syndrome, where deep down underneath, even though I'm a psychologist with a license on the bookshelf, I feel like I'm inadequate and I'm not good enough, and there are psychologists who have board certifications and multiple degrees, and I'll never amount to that. If I'm doing a worksheet process, when I cancel my need to be right, I also have to cancel my need to be right about all those negative beliefs I hold about myself. I'm being asked to step into a level of openness that my conscious, logical mind can't even comprehend. And when I do that over and over again, when I pick up the tools and continue to do a worksheet or do a breath session or do an EFT tapping session or do a mind shift or targeted journaling session, the more I do that, the closer I move to the day when I ask to be shown and the light blazes and the trumpets blare and the clouds part and I see something I couldn't have imagined just moments before. And that's the promise of this work, the eventual outcome of just continually giving up the need to be right and asking to be shown. That's the result of continual application of the tools. That's the result of learning to live in the question, as Rilke would call us to do. One other thing somebody posted, one of the spiritual teachers from a while back, Neville Goddard, in 1954, he offered the process of, we call it the pruning shears of revision. He says, every day before you go to sleep, think through the events of the day. If any events or moments did not go the way you wanted, then simply replay them in your mind in a way that thrills you. And as you recreate those events in your mind exactly as you want, you're cleaning up your frequency from the day and you're emitting a new signal of energy and frequency for tomorrow. You will be intentionally recreating and creating new pictures for your future. It's never too late to change the pictures. And when I read that, it reminded me of Dr. Michael Rice's Getting the Stress You Need in the Mind Goal Management Sheet, which recommends that every night before I go to bed, I spend just a few moments to say I cancel any unachieved goal from any time in my life. whether it was goals I had set up for myself for the day or goals from the past. And having canceled all those goals, I asked to be shown how to have a restful night's sleep. And if I've done some framing of goals for the next day, I asked to be shown how to evaluate those. Cancel every unachieved goal, clean slate, and ask to be shown. Well, Neville Goddard takes it another level and says, review the day, and if anything went in a way you didn't like, use the power of your imagination to visualize it going the right way, having you be more loving rather than impatient or whatever it is, and then you set up a frequency for tomorrow to be even better than today. So cancel the negative, and Neville Goddard says, and install the positive. So we continue to learn and grow, and we welcome your comments or questions at 563-999-3581. If you call that number and press 1, we've got 15 minutes to have a conversation or to discuss a topic of your suggestion, or to field a question about the powerful worksheet that happened in the support group last night, or anything else of dozens and dozens of topics we've brought up in the past 10-plus years on Mindshifters Radio. 563-999-3581. If you call that number and press 1, we've got time to talk. I have an interview coming up next week with a gentleman who has his own lived experience with mental health problems. And his name is Steve Miccio, M-I-C-C-I-O, and he's the Chief Executive Officer of People USA. And they are recreating the peer-to-peer network. He's active with the following groups: Chair of the National Psychiatric Rehabilitation Association. He's a board member of CIT International. He's a subject matter expert for Reentry Policy Academy that's headed by the SAMHSA Gaines Center. And he's got outcome studies that show people do so much better when they're in community-based, infusion recovery-based mental health services. And I'm looking forward to that interview and potentially, depending upon the relevance of the content, sharing it with our audience. So if you know anybody like that, or if you know anybody that might benefit from topics like that, please direct them either to previous episodes of Mindshifters Radio or the On Your Mind podcast through Journey's Dream at journeysdream.org/podcast, where we have a whole host of people we've interviewed about holistic, integrative, functional medicine approaches to help people back to mental health when they've had a challenge or an emotional crisis in their life. And I'll name again one of those resources. I was recently asked to be listed as a provider on the Same Here Global, all one word, samehereglobal.org website. And they've got a growing number of people who are willing to say, hey, you know, I've had struggles too, and here's my story, or I'm a provider, an integrative provider for mental health services, and here's why I took that approach. And so you might find someone that's in your area that you might turn to for support, or you might just find comfort in reading that there are lots and lots of high-functioning people who've had their own mental health challenges. And as for even more resources for that, you can go to the website at integrativementalhealthsummit.org and see about the upcoming October 8th through 10th virtual summit. integrativementalhealthsummit.org. It's running from October 8th through 10th this year, and it's another good place to find resources for integrative, holistic, functional medicine approaches to mental health challenges. So, how can we serve you for the next 12 minutes? 563-999-3581. What's on your mind? Remember, from Anthony DeMello earlier in the call, we talked about how concentration is like a laser beam or a spotlight, and awareness is like a floodlight or a bank of floodlights. What we want to do with this work is train ourselves to be more aware, to be more in the observer position for the early warning signs that our thoughts are turning negative, or that there's a tension or a resistance, a constriction going on in the energy system, whether we call it the body or the physical energy system. And at the earliest warning sign, we call a time out for ourselves. We take those calming breaths that work best for us, and we turn the focus inside, the exact opposite of what our culture teaches. My mind is going to be busy serving up for me dozens of really good rationalizations for why it's justified for me to be angry, why it's justified for me to be scared, or why it's justified for me to want revenge. And none of those rationalizations or justifications will ever lead to peace, to joy, to healing within me. Every one of those rationalizations, justifications, serves as a blockage, as a roadblock to my achieving what I say I want. What do I want? I want happiness. I want peace. I want contentment. I want joy. I want compassion in my life. And every rationalization is an excuse that blocks me from achieving the desired goal. It's literally the building material and the blueprint for creating my own personal hell. My knowing I'm right whenever I'm angry. The way Guy Finley says is, we're raised in a culture that teaches us that when we're angry, it means we're right and someone or something else is wrong. And the more angry we get, the more we know we're right and the other person is wrong. And he says, the fact of the matter is, my anger doesn't prove I'm right. My anger only proves that I don't know what rightness is. And in the moment when I don't know, when I can admit that I don't know, when I can throw the door open and question, now I've opened infinite possibilities. As long as I hold on to being right, I'm stuck. I'm in the prison of my own creation. And the bottom line is, my conscious logical mind is intended to be a very faithful servant in way of mastery. They say, excuse the language, but your logical mind was meant to be a very stupid servant, and we have been trained to the opposite. We've been trained to ignore our insight and our intuition and the power of questioning everything and the power of asking to be shown. And we've been trained to elevate conscious logical mind, which is supposed to be the servant, to the level of master. And everything about this work is intended in one way or another to be the unraveling of that conditioning, to be the opening to a new set of possibilities, that each new heartbeat far outstretch the capacities of my conscious logical mind. There is no way I will ever figure out how it is that what I'm doing is the same thing over and over again without getting good results. I can't figure that out with my conscious logical mind, because my conscious logical mind is busy telling me, just formulate another email. Just find a way to say what you've said 17 times before a slightly different way. Just find a way to motivate this person to give you what you want or do what you want. My conscious logical mind has a very limited set of tools to use in its toolkit. And once it's locked into an unhealthy pattern, it cannot show me the way out. The only way out is for me, the I, the observer self, to be willing, cancel that, to withdraw my mental, emotional energy from that process, to, at one level or another, admit defeat, or at least admit I don't like how it feels to be this stuck. Byron Katie calls it, the not knowing mind, the don't know mind. I don't know what anything is or is for, we're told from the Way of Mastery. I don't know what any of my brothers or sisters need. We're told this over and over again in the Course in Miracles and the Way of Mastery. And unless we can dismantle the conditioning of our culture, which trains us to believe we do know and we should know, and if we can just figure it out, everything will be okay, unless we can dismantle that conditioning, we cannot create the space for something new. Create the space for something new, set a trap for God. The ancient Aramaic definition of prayer. Leave an open space. There's a story about the World War II pilots that crashed in the atolls in these islands, and everybody survives. They crash landed. In these stories, everybody survives, but now they're on an island surrounded by enemies, and they're hiding out in caves, and the radio is damaged, so they can't send a signal, but they can receive. And so during the day, they're hiding out in the caves, and there's no good reception there. So at dark, at midnight, the captain sends one of the privates up to the top of a hill where there's some reception and says, now just listen in on this radio, because we know they will be sending us the coordinates for where and when we're going to get rescued. And the private is up there for the first night, and he comes back, and the captain says, did you hear anything? And the private says, nope. And he sends him the next night. He comes back, and the captain says, hear anything? And the private says, nope. And he sends him the third night, and he comes back with the same thing. And the captain is beside himself because he knows of all the protocols, there will be sending out the signal. The information is out there. The radio waves are being broadcast. So the captain, thinking there must be something else going on here, he follows the private up to the top of the hill in the middle of the night. And he hides where he can't be seen, and what he witnesses is the private is up there surfing the radio waves and the shortwave radio, spinning the dial, listening sometimes to Russian and then Japanese and then German and then Polish, and the captain bursts out of his hiding and says, what are you doing, man? I've seen your personnel file. I know you don't know any of these other languages. And the private said, well, Captain, I was bored. I didn't want to be up here all alone. So instead of staying quiet, instead of waiting in the open space on the proper channel where he might receive the information about where and how they can get rescued, the private is busying himself with distractions. And he's got justifications for it. He knows it's better for him to have entertainment than to be up there and be bored. And he'll never get rescued if he can't slow down and stop doing what isn't working and leave the space for the answers to come. That's what we do in every worksheet process. I cancel my need to be right. I cancel my need for anyone or anything else to change, including myself. I specifically cancel my goal in that worksheet. I put my conscious logical mind on the shelf for now, and I ask to be shown the hidden part of my own mind that's actually creating the upset that I'm trying to dismantle with this worksheet. And then I put myself in the most open, allowing space I possibly can, and I ask to be shown. How is this resonating stuff from my past, my beliefs? How is my internal process creating this pain and trying to blame others? And then I just hold the confidence that no matter how disjointed, how irrelevant the sights, the sounds, the physical sensations, the thoughts and the emotions that arise in my awareness might seem, I trust that whatever comes into my awareness after I've asked to be shown will be part of what I need to see to begin to heal here and move forward. As the Way of Mastery and the Course in Miracles point out to us, whenever we ask, we are shown. However, most of us ask, and then we'll get an urge or we'll get an insight, and we'll say, well, that can't be right. And we push it away because we can't see the conscious logical connection, or we don't have a rationalization that feels comfortable, and so we ignore the offerings that we are continually given by life. So that's our show for today. I will remind us all that we come from love. We're made of this stuff we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false. And I'll welcome Jeannie Rice.
Thank you, Dr. Tim. I had never heard that story before. That was an excellent example of the guy surfing the channels instead of listening.
Yeah, just instead of just staying quiet and setting a trap for God, tuning to the right frequency and allowing it to unfold.
Yeah.
Well, have yourself a wonderful show.
Thank you. Appreciate it.